Hey, I'm Andy Parker. This is the UX Coach Podcast. I believe that by sharing our experiences, we can redefine how we learn and find purpose in work by helping each other grow. I started this podcast to share people's stories about how they've developed their skills within the UX industry, where the future is heading, and what makes a great UX practitioner. Want to share your story and your experiences with everyone else in the industry? Get in touch with me at theuxcoach.com. Let's get into the episode. Hi everyone, you're about to join myself and Kevin Smith in a conversation about career switching and private design education. Kevin joined me for an interview with Tom from the previous episode the week before COVID closed the world. As with the interview with Tom, I wanted to come back and share that contrasting experience. Private or post-higher education learning is a topic I get asked about a lot, and I think the different experiences between Tom and Kevin were so valuable to share, and so did they. So returning to the subject, Kevin shares what he went through to career switch from being a teacher by going to a full-time bootcamp and how bootcamp experiences compare to more traditional education tracks. So he shared with me what it was like soul searching for what to do with his career, how long it took to find the first role, and gives advice for anyone looking for a new job on what to look out for in a company. So we're going to go straight into this conversation today, where I've asked Kevin to tell me about his life as a teacher.
Yeah, I trained to be a primary school teacher, and that was the plan to go into teaching. I'd done English as a foreign language, sort of teaching abroad and stuff beforehand, but fairly soon into the job of being a teacher, I found it quite rigid and really awful work-life balance. Yeah, couldn't go out for a drink with friends like during the week. Had to think about what I was doing on Sundays because usually I'd be planning for the rest of the week. And my partner Katie had the same thing, so we were going through it together, and we kind of avoided permanent jobs with schools, and instead, after a while, we opted to become supply teachers, so that we could gain more control over, our work and our sort of social life, and that worked quite well. But still, the education system was really frustrating. I didn't feel comfortable with the type of teacher it required me to be, because there was such an emphasis on hitting targets, not only kind of yearly targets, but even like within a lesson. It was just it's very controlling, and there wasn't really much space for exploring stuff. I just started thinking about what I could do to get out. It just wasn't working for me on like numerous levels. And I looked into carpentry. I looked, on the way to school, I was looking at the bin men. I was thinking, wow, that looks that looks pretty straightforward, and I reckon I could get on board with that. Just kind of head down, do your job. I really was that unhappy for a while. I met up with a friend, and he used to be a college teacher, and he told me about UX design, and it sounded great. And I also got an idea of how to get into UX through Bill, because he'd done that retraining from being a teacher and then going into UX, and he'd done it through General Assembly. I think General Assembly was quite a bit smaller at the time Bill did it, but he said it was a great experience. I think he made a lot of friends through it. And then he told me about his jobs and his work following the General Assembly course. And it just sounded great. And I really liked the idea of working in a more sort of progressive work environment where you're treated like an adult.
My experience I've got quite a lot of friends who've become teachers, and like yourself, decided that primary school education was where they wanted to be. So early years education in the UK. And if I think about all of those individuals, is that their passions, being able to help other people in a really creative way. So I'm wondering whether that is where that tension was coming from for you, of your experience of then when you got into post, of actually not having that freedom to explore problem solving in a creative way.
Yeah, yeah. At this point, I haven't said anything positive about teaching, really, and and I was realizing that as you were talking. But yeah, the reasons why I wanted to go into teaching included, yeah, kind of discovering and exploring with kids, being able to sort of guide them, and also to understand, to learn about kids as well, and what they need and what they like and enjoy, and I just knew that it would be or I hoped that it would be much more rewarding and rich experience, where I'd make strong relationships with students and teachers. But yeah, in terms of like the kind of crossover with what I'm doing now, like UX design, yeah, I can see some overlapping.
So let's talk about your experience then of going on a boot camp. So for people that aren't familiar, General Assembly is very much an international organisation now, isn't it? That for a very long time was the only place that you could actually get any form of education in context of these sort of new technology design skills, like UX design and service design and things like that, because there weren't modules at college and university. Now there are. In order to become a teacher, you have to do a degree. What's the differences in your experience of doing mainstream education to get a degree in order to get a job, the process that looks like of going through a private but recognized body to then get into a job?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. If I'm talking about my specific experience, so I already had a degree. So when I wanted to go into teaching, I did a PGCE, postgraduate course, and the intention of that was to get a job at the end of it. So even though it was more formal education, yeah, it's still vocational, and the elements of that course were geared up to help you come out of it with a job. You know, work experience at a few different schools along the way. I mean, it's a year-long course.
And you do placements throughout that, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had two placements, and some courses and PGCEs are set up differently, and I think sometimes you can actually just start the year in a job already, and you just learn on the job pretty much, and it's much more kind of first hand. But for me, it was like classroom based at the university, South Bank, but then had these like two quite long work placements in schools, two different schools. The theory was that the school might like you, and also if you like the school, then you might they might offer you a place at the end of the year or something.
So it's kind of like that internship model in a way, of like you're on a hope that after these 6 weeks of me being here, someone will see something and go, "Hey, why don't you stay a bit longer?"
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they know that if they take you on when you're a student teacher, well, yeah, when you're a student, when you're studying, if they take you on, they're going to need to support you as a newly qualified teacher for that first year of your life as a teacher. So that's quite a big investment from them. So with General Assembly, I would say it was even more dedicated. So the course was more dedicated to you finding a job at the end of it. I mean, there weren't any work placements, but you had some experience on the course, particularly the last project at the end of the course, where you and a small team of other students get to work with a real startup, and you find solutions to a problem that they have, and you present it back to them and stuff. So there is that kind of opportunity, and there's also a meet and greet evening after you've finished the course. You can, chat to people who, like, from companies and organizations who are interested in hiring. They do the rounds, and you get to talk to them, you get to show them your work, that kind of stuff. So the General Assembly course, as I understand it, and I imagine it's probably still the case, it's still very much geared towards you finding your first job.
These boot camps are delivered in a couple of different ways, and you did an intensive one where it's full time. It's the equivalent of being at school for like 3 months, is it?
Yeah, that's right. It's 9 to 5 every day, and including some Saturdays. It runs for 3 months, and for half of that time, you're going in 5 days a week plus a Saturday. So it's really,
it's intense. So you're trying to cram a lot in there, and you're saying that the objective is to make you employable. That like intensive learning experience, is it comparable to doing even like a 1 year foundation, or like your PGC, for example? How do they relate? The difference between spending a year gestating knowledge and being able to practice it and doing it in the space of 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, so I think certainly on the General Assembly course, there wasn't really the time to do much like extra reading or digging into the history or the science behind, behavioral theory, that kind of stuff. I can imagine if you did a human computer interaction course or a degree, then you would really dig into a lot of that kind of stuff.
So kind of more focused on the theory and principles as behind why you do something, rather than just learning how to do it.
Yeah, so I think on the General Assembly course, I didn't get as much theory. It was a very good kind of quick tour of the approaches, and there was I think there was a whole week on design thinking, some of the big approaches to design, like lean UX, that kind of stuff. So you did get to you got an idea of the landscape, the UX landscape and design landscape. You learnt about the difference between a visual designer, a UI designer, and a UX designer, and a user researcher, and it basically gave me the knowledge of the profession. If I was coming from the outside and I wanted to know, what does a team look like in an organization, and what does a project look like, and how might the team move through that project? What stages would they go through to achieve their goals? So all of that, but there wasn't really time to dig into this theory over here or this approach here. It was just like a quick kind of rundown of how you do it.
You sort of build up a basic understanding of how to run a project end to end, using a handful of methods, and at the end of it, you've got the opportunity to then demonstrate your capability of doing that on a live project. How did you feel when you landed the first job after that?
Yeah, I mean, just going back a little bit, throughout the whole course, you're learning sort of classroom learning in the morning up till lunchtime, and then you're applying it in the afternoon. So there are projects pretty much from the first week all the way through, and it's only the last one that is with a real client. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to apply learning like almost immediately on the same day. So that was really good.
You get shown how to sort of put your portfolio together with those bits, right?
Yeah, and that's a really important part of the whole course is that you're learning during the course, and in the process of learning, you're creating these kind of deliverables or outputs, which you can then gather together and put into your portfolio. And you get guidance on on portfolios. You get people coming from recruitment agencies to tell you what portfolios really work for them, which mistakes to avoid, that kind of stuff. So all of that was really, really useful.
So how did that then tie together with you being able to go out into the job market? Did you feel confident that you were going to be able to find something?
On the course, they do make it clear that it's all about how much you put in. Some people are lucky and they get hired quickly. Other people have to just keep on going until the right job or something that they want comes up. They support you until you get the job. So you have weekly check-ins if you want them with a kind of a careers specialist or a careers advisor. And they have loads of contacts with agencies and employers. So I did feel quite confident, but I knew I was up against it being in Brighton and wanting my first job to be in Brighton. I really didn't want to have to jump on the train every morning and go up to London. And I knew that the job pool would be smaller in Brighton. But I knew that it would be a bit tricky. There'd be fewer jobs to choose from, and I'd be going up against like local UXers with more experience. So I felt hopeful, and even before I finished the course, I went to UX Camp Brighton. They were really supportive, really encouraging, and that really gave me a boost as well. Like going back up to London to continue with the course, knowing that I'd already made a few contacts. So that was all. It all felt really sort of, there was momentum, and they were saying encouraging things. But obviously, I still had to go ahead and like apply for the jobs and interview. Months went by, and I was really active. Like every day, I'd go to like a cafe and just applying for stuff, trying to meet new people. But it wasn't until October. So I finished the course in sort of April, May, and then, it was quite a few months of hard job searching. And then October, I got my first job.
What type of job descriptions were you looking for? Because I think this is an element that is challenging for anyone, whether they're coming out of formal education or looking at career switching, as you did, where you are taking an acknowledgement of that you don't have a background in this space. You've got to think about what are the transferable skills, as they're always described, and how do you present that in the work along with this like boot camp training. Did you feel that there were specific job titles or descriptions that were your ideal entry point, and then others that were just a no-go, like you weren't going to get them?
I was definitely looking for junior roles. I wanted to do UX design specifically. I didn't really have a big interest in doing or going for a UI, because back then I think they were more interchangeable.
There's a lot of that hybriding, right, of like UX/UI designer and things like that.
Yeah. And I always knew that as a UX designer, I would need to do a certain amount of UI design. But yeah, I wanted to practice what I'd learned on the UX design course. So I was looking for junior roles because I didn't want to plunge myself into the deep end. I was afraid that I wouldn't have the skills and experience yet to carry that off. I didn't want to fall at the first hurdle, so I really did want a junior role, and I was looking for job descriptions where they would talk about the team perhaps being supportive, or I was particularly looking for teams where there was a mid-level or a senior UX designer. I wasn't interested in getting a job with a startup, really, where it was really manic and tons of responsibility right from the start.
Yeah, that kind of baptism of fire as well, that you're probably the only person that's going to get hired to do that thing.
Yeah.
That's quite like an honest approach to the types of things you were looking for, because I must admit I have certainly come across many people in your situation there where you're doing that career switch where you've built up an experience in a particular field, and so there's a bit of a desire to re-enter a new industry kind of at the same level of authority and pay and those kinds of things. Being honest about that, was that something that you were really conscious of doing?
Yeah, it was, because even though I'd come through the course and I really enjoyed it and I got a lot from it, and I came out of it thinking I think I might be quite good at this. I think this might be a field where I can sort of develop and progress. I knew that at that point, I still had next to no experience, and I knew that every role and every organization would be totally different. I knew that there was loads of experience that I needed to get, basically, in order to kind of become more competent and valuable as a UX designer. So I was looking for a company or a place that were prepared to kind of invest in me as someone starting from next to nothing, but I could show that I had potential.
Which is no different to what you would expect for someone that's just finished their like formal education as well, right? If you've got to be looking for like they show acumen, and there's an opportunity here to support them. Are there particular things that you kind of pick up on in job ads or looking at companies that you could recommend to other people that are doing similar things to look out for?
One thing that I looked out for, and I've always asked in every interview that I've had since, is asking about what professional development capacity they have, or how much professional development do they do? Do they offer a personal budget for you to spend on whatever you want it to be? But have they thought about it, and are they supporting their employees to progress and develop? Because some places don't really. Like one place that I've worked for since didn't. And when you have to ask for things, it feels a lot harder, and you're just less inclined to kind of to go on that course, which might cost 500 quid, or to sign up for this remote thing that runs for like 6 weeks.
Well, it helps having someone giving you recommendations of things that would be worth you doing as well, right? Otherwise, you run that risk of finding something that you're personally interested in and think it would be a good skill set, and then you never get to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking for signs of that kind of work culture, that professional development or performance management culture is what I would look for. And actually something that's been missing in the jobs that I've had, almost all of them really, has been that formal kind of performance management system or process where that where you do set out goals, because I think in the first year or two or even three of your career, this is how I feel anyway, it's really important to have those kind of things to work towards, because you need to get up and running really quickly, and there are loads of goals that you have, and it's a really steep learning curve. So actually, to make that more formal and have that recognized and have your supervisor working with you to hit those standards, or those markers, is really important. And I think, I mean, it's down to the jobs that I've ended up going for, but that's been kind of missing somewhat.
So how do you feel that has then reflected on your personal development? Has that meant that you've solely got your capabilities through just failing fast and hard on projects? Have you had to seek knowledge elsewhere? How have you continued your learning journey?
I've tried to contribute or participate in the local events that are going on. The UX Brighton Slack channel is is brilliant for that. And not only going to the events and things, but just being on that channel, you learn a lot, and you get to hear about different things that people are up to, and maybe different specialisms. We were starting to look at jobs to be done in my current role, and I had no experience with it. And I posted on the Slack channel and got lots of input from different people. And I think Stephanie Trofe, got in touch, and I ended up having a call with her. So I've really, and that was super helpful. That really set me on my way. But yeah, I feel like I've just kind of done my own my own things, gone to my own channels to get that information. Sometimes
that personal network that you've built through going to local community events, do you actually still speak to people that were on your course as well?
Yes, a little bit. It's become a bit more disjointed since COVID. Yeah, there were a few of them that I was regularly meeting up with, or like a few times a year.
It's obviously something that's quite, any of these sort of situations, whether it's in that educational setting or like your local communities, of that it is doing the job that it's supposed to.
Yeah.
That you have people that you can go to who are going to provide you with guidance and advice without any real motivation behind it of like, yes, and it will cost you X. That it's goodwill and support in the way that a community should be.
As you were talking there, I was just reminded of a time I was struggling with something, and I saw that this girl from my General Assembly class, I saw on LinkedIn that she was now a lead UX researcher. I was sort of seeking some advice, and so I got in touch with her and ended up talking to her on the phone. Hadn't seen her, or spoken to her for about 4 years, and chatting to her was really, really great. I came away from that conversation feeling a lot more positive, and had ideas of how to kind of control the things that I was worried about, in my role. So that network has really proved valuable.
What's the future? What's the next frontier? You've evolved and learned and developed these skills over a number of years. You're kind of hitting that infamous sort of midweight rut period, I guess. You can do things sort of back to front. That doesn't mean that there's not always new things to learn. What's the current challenges for you now?
I think, sometimes I don't regard myself as ever being a manager or a supervisor, and not really enjoying some of those responsibilities. But then in my role, some of the skill sets and do surface, and I find myself taking on that role because I'm the only UX researcher at my company, and I'm setting up a lot of the processes for research within the team. I'm having to communicate and train others in the team on how to do research and how to set it up, and about our processes and our systems. And in doing so, I'm realizing that actually, so I do have some of these skills. So maybe it would be good to kind of refine them and build upon them, because there's a lot to learn when it comes to managing others. Yeah, I'm at the start of that journey.
It almost feels a bit full circle, right? Starting in a teaching role and then starting to think about, well, how do I impart this wisdom and this knowledge that I have gained up to this point to the next person?
Yeah, I'd never made that connection. It's funny because when I was going for my first job, and my first few roles, I always emphasized my teaching background, and people would always say, "Oh yeah, no, that's good. That is, lots of crossover skills there." But as I've got further away from the start of my UX adventure, I've thought about it less and less.
You need to get your macaroni shapes out. That's that's what's missing. Do some potato stamps and label the volcano pieces. All of the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, agencies and companies love to big up the kind of, or buy into the playfulness these days, don't they? Like Lego sets in the office and stuff. I mean, and in doing workshops with the team, it's really good practice to kind of make it playful and engaging. And so I am thinking about those things when I'm doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's interesting to think that it is kind of full circle.
Here we are again at the end of another episode, and I really thank you for listening in. I hope that the wisdom that Kevin has just shared there has rung true with you and has got you thinking about what you're going to do next. With that in mind, as always, my inbox is open. So if you would like to share your story, your experiences of getting into the industry, moving into that first job, getting past that midweight hurdle into leadership, maybe you have some insight into what it's like at the moment as a hiring manager and what you're looking for in people coming into your organization. Whatever it might be, get in touch. Come share it with everybody else. And until next time, don't forget that you can keep an eye on what's going on with courses and everything else at theuxcoach.com.